In the real world, is giftedness hereditary?
Well, again, if we define giftedness as being sort of high cognitive ability or high academic ability, then it does seem as if there is some heritability. But again, nobody's identified particular genes that are responsible for giftedness or even for intelligence. It seems like there probably are lots of genes that each play a little tiny role in terms of sort of what makes us who we are, including our cognitive abilities. And then there's this huge interaction between sort of, again, our innate, right, our sort of genetic composition and our environment. And we see that even through twin studies. It's really interesting. You would think, you know, if something is completely genetic, then identical twins would look exactly the same. And they don't. I mean, obviously, identical twins are more similar to each other in terms of their cognitive abilities than fraternal twins are. But they aren't completely redundant, right? So we know that it's not all about genetics. And you would think, well, wait a minute, identical twins, they also grow up in the same family, so they would have very similar environments too. But even so, right, there are all these really subtle things that come into play in terms of the way that a given person interacts with their environment, makes sense of their environment, and develops their abilities a little bit differently.
You were talking about giftedness, but we're also talking about personhood here.
Yeah. So each person is unique, right? And even the abilities that a kid or a person chooses to develop have something to do with interests, and interests have to do with prior experiences, right? So there are all these things, all these subtle things that can happen in your life that send you down one path versus another path. And once you get this interest in this one area and you start to develop your abilities in that area, you actually again are changing your own brain structure. We know that to be true, that the brain is incredibly malleable. And so even though we have sort of this, we have some innate things that we're born with, we actually have a lot more control over how we develop those abilities than I think people realized in the past.